We are group 3. We're going to be talking about Talenti Gelato in France.
I'm Chelsea Hurd.
I'm Coleman Johnson.
I'm Jessica Palomo.
I'm Shehneez Pirani.
I'm Lorena Sanchez.
And I'm Vivian Torch.
So to start off, we're going to talk about the value proposition. So at Talenti, they are big into their processes, they're big into their ingredients, and they're big into just putting in the most authentic effort into their product. So here's this value proposition.
Okay, for the company background, Josh Hochschuler founded Talenti in 2003, based on a traditional Argentine gelato making method that he learned after he moved to Argentina. Talenti is inspired by and named after Bernardo Buontalenti, excuse the pronunciation, and he was the Florentine artist who invented gelato. To understand the intricate gelato making process, he spent months apprenticing with a local family in Argentina that he later partnered with to open their first gelateria. They had been making the dessert for generations using, again, the traditional Argentine gelato method that uses pure cane sugar rather than high fructose corn syrup, since it has less fat than ice cream. There's also an organic, gluten-free, non-GMO, and kosher dairy option. Talenti started out as a gelateria in Dallas, Texas, and is now manufactured there, but the company's headquarters are in Minneapolis. Talenti has positioned itself as a fast-growing competitor in the premium ice cream market, traditionally dominated by large food companies such as Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's. In 2014, Unilever acquired Talenti, and on December 2nd, 2014, the buyout was finalized. As part of the deal with Unilever, both Hochschuler and Gill, the co-owners, had to stay with the company and were in charge of running the company through 2016. These are now the CEOs and co-CEO. He came up with flavors by looking to classic Argentine, Italian, and American flavors and putting twists on them by following flavor trends and trying to initiate their own twists. The most successful flavor trend they were largely responsible for starting was salty caramel. Talenti focuses more on the quality of the ingredients and staying authentic, while Unilever, Talenti's parent company, focuses on sustainability and progress, whether it's through healthy alternatives or science leading the way. And Unilever, Talenti's parent company, is a British multinational company founded in 1929, so it's been in business over 100 years. And they're one of the largest consumer goods companies committed to making sustainable living commonplace. And their top 3 competitors in the United States are Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams, The Comfy Cow, and Raiders Inc.
Moving on to the product information, Talenti sources real, authentic ingredients for each of their flavors, and each one is created especially for Talenti to be exciting and unique. For example, their Madagascan vanilla bean flavor includes a dash of lemon zest to enhance the floral vanilla notes. And for their double dark chocolate, they blend semi-sweet chocolate chips with vermouth to create an exciting flavor with that Talenti twist. Their dulce de leche recipe has actually been passed down for generations and generations, and it comes from the Argentinian grandmother of one of the founders' friends. So that adds kind of a special and unique personal touch to the brand's line of flavors. Each step in the production process is carefully thought out, from their ingredients to their partnerships to their suppliers across the world. So they use a special production process to make their gelato called slow cooking, and they achieve the utmost quality in each pint by doing so. In this process, ingredients are slowly cooked for 45 minutes exactly for maximum flavor and depth. Their top 5 flavors their top 5 most popular flavors are caramel cookie crunch, Mediterranean mint, Sicilian pistachio, sea salt caramel, and southern butter pecan. I need to, next slide, there we go. Looking at this map here from Talenti's website, you can see there's spread of ingredient sources from all over the world. So you can see the raspberries over there on the left. The Roman raspberry sorbetto contains specifically 97 raspberries in each pint. And instead of sourcing them from one place, they get them both from California and Chile. Their pistachio gelato flavor is sourced from California as well, which is known for growing some of the most delicious pistachios. For all of their coffee flavors, they get their beans from Brazil and Colombia, ensuring that they're products of fair trade. They get their chocolate from Belgium and sustainably sourced cocoa powder from West Africa to make their chocolate flavors stand out. For their vanilla bean flavor, they import all of their vanilla beans from the coast of East Africa. Their mangoes come from Maharashtra, India, which Talenti says is known for the finest and juiciest mangoes in the world. And for their dairy-free strawberry hibiscus sorbetto, they get their hibiscus flowers from Vietnam and coconuts from the Philippines. As for Talenti's packaging, their packaging reflects luxury, and their see-through jars showcase all of the beautiful flavors and colors, which gives off the impression that they're a premium brand. The company's slogan is "Raise the Jar," which aims to raise the standards of how gelato is made and enjoyed. Their emphasis on quality really sets them above their competitors. So they encourage pint cycling, which is seen on this graphic in the left. So pint cycling is the act of recycling Talenti containers for multiple different uses instead of just tossing them out when you're done. They can be used for things like art projects, storage, organization, even Tupperware for leftovers. You can even use them as a vase, like on the bottom right. Prior to 2019, they actually had a non-recyclable plastic ring on the outside of their lids, but have since removed that as an initiative to reduce waste being sent to landfills. Talenti's target market includes middle-class, middle-aged adults who have children, specifically mothers. It includes adult women and middle to upper class women who have an interest in online retail and e-commerce.
So right now we're going to go over the analysis of France. It's going to be going over the cultural, which is the values, the characteristics, and the cultural patterns. Then we're going to be talking about the social analysis, which is like the living standards, the dialects, the economic class, and of course the economic of the French economy and currency as well.
Okay, so this is the cultural analysis of France. Some of their characteristics include, as seen on the left side, being the third largest e-commerce in the market in the EU and the sixth in the world. On the graph, it shows over 65 billion euros turnover for France. So this causes a great opportunity for international growth for the company. Also, according to the Edward Hall's framework, France is considered a high context culture, which means they heavily rely on like personal relationships, values, and societal status. They're also very attracted to online shopping, so they do prefer paying with cards over cash, and also tend to follow trends and influencers on social media. So they're very much tech savvy, but their customers also appreciate respect, politeness, clear information, and prompt delivery service. So they also take pride in their nation and government. So they can seem to be seen as rude to foreigners. They embrace their sophistication style of their country and their motto, liberty, equality, and fraternity. As we learned in the class, it's also important to not directly translate previous marketing methods from the US to like other countries, because we have seen like it doesn't work. So some cultural patterns that are relevant to the product are so the consumer behavior in France is very diversified, considering they do have a large, very high population. So they believe that consumption is synonymous with pleasure, such as desserts, which we will touch on a little bit later. There is a growing interest in sustainable products, like being organic and local. So they are more focused on the quality of the products. For example, in the food sector, despite a fall in the prices, the quantity of products purchased has decreased and the quality of purchases have increased.
So moving on to France's demographics, according to Statista, since 2021, the population has exceeded by 67 million, and they do have an average life expectancy of 83 years old. So they are very health conscious and enjoy high living standards. So riding bikes is mostly the heavy mode of transportation there. And according to Britannica, they have the largest Muslim population, which is around 5 million. 85% are white, 10% North African, 3.5% African American, 1.5% Asian. And then the top 3 cities that are heavily populated are Paris, Marseille, and Lyon.
Moving on to France's transportation. France uses a wide range of transportation like railways, river, air, and land Transportation. French National Railways is a state-owned company which is responsible for the most technology advanced, French National Rail. Okay, I'm going to start this again from the top of the slide. Okay, moving into, I am having so much trouble. Okay, moving on to France's transportation. France uses a wide range of transportation like railways, river, air, and land transportation. French National Railways is a state-owned company which is responsible for the most technologically advanced, fastest railway systems. Air France is France's major airline. There are 31,939 kilometers, which in miles is 19,846 miles worth of railway lines. There are 828,000 kilometers, and in miles, 514,605 miles of roads in France, which most of them are paved. 47% of the waterways in France are in use, and the top 3 major port cities are Dunkirk, Paris, Mulhouse, and Bordeaux.
By the end of 1998, there was around 35 million main telephone usage in France. See on the graph, a part of France, by 1996, there were at least 218 newspapers sold in France. And this is from a measurement of per 1,000 people. Radio broadcasting such as AM, FM, and shortwave catered to not only domestic, but also international clientele. Cable TV, fun fact, was not as widespread, and it was only known for higher income families in France to actually have that. In France's ratio, 7.5 cable subscribers per 1,000 people. By 1997, the number of radios per 1,000 people in France was 937. France overall is catching up to the internet industry. The French internet industry and other communication sectors, however, are heavily regulated than those like Germany and Britain. So government is trying to promote some type of usage of IT, and they're trying to deregulate certain aspects of that specific industry. So now on to the legal system for France. France is a civil law system, which means they put heavy emphasis on codes instead of case law. They have a quasi-presidential system, which means that a president is elected every 5 years. The president then chooses the prime minister from the parliamentary majority. The French parliament is made up of the National Assembly and the Senate, and it has a dual system in place which includes the public and private law. And this is regarding to the legislation for France. In public law, this branch defines the principles of operations of the state and public bodies. Meanwhile, private law, it's only applied to private individuals and private entities of the government. Another thing to keep in mind is that there is a specific hierarchy when it comes to the French laws. This is categorized in the order from greatest to least. So the first one, the most greatest one, is the institutional acts akin to the Constitution. The second one is the ordinary acts voted by the parliament. And the third one is measures taken by the government in matters that would be normal and relevant in order to keep the country running. The courts are divided into 2 parts, which is the judicial and administrative courts. The public law is regarded to administrative courts, and the highest judiciary court is the Court of Appeals. The top of admin courts is the Council of State with 8 courts of appeal. The third different aspect in regards to the judiciary is the Constitutional Council, and this specific branch overlooks and reviews statutes before they're enacted, as well as overseeing the whole national election and answering questions for any citizens, especially regarding the constitutionality of laws. This specific majority, however, is made up of 9 members, and they are appointed by the president. 3 are the head of the National Assembly, and the other 3 are head of the Senate. So now on to the social analysis. According to the USA Today, talking about food habits, they really just specified on a whole bunch of things, but we can get in and dive into more specific ones. So examples of more famous desserts are baba room, the upside down apple tart, the chocolate eclair, chocolate mousse, and the cherry flan cake. And most of these desserts, however, in the dessert culture for France, they only buy dessert for special occasions. And usually, since as mentioned before, French people are typically known to be health conscious, so therefore they only eat fruit and dessert. And then to Love to Know website regarding food culture socially in France compared to the United States, how we tend to look through fridges for snacks and always tend to eat food in a hurry. The French do not approve of that at all. They believe that vending machines and having drinks and snacks are just not a part of the contemporary lifestyle which they choose to live. So this means their contemporary lifestyle means that there's more flexibility in regards to their schedule. So when you get, if you break it down to their everyday schedule, their lunchtime might be around 1 p.m. You might have night owls per se that eat as late as 2 a.m. But the usual dinner time is around 8:30. And then lunch and dinner time is where they usually have the heavier meals. However, since they have heavier meals, there's no snack in between. And outside of bigger cities, it's really hard to find lunch after 2 p.m. or even dinner after 10 p.m. And the 3 essential specialty items that they have is bread, cheese, and wine. They have, France has 32,000 independent bakeries, and bread lovers buy 10 million baguettes every year, baguettes and flaky croissants. And this society is typically known for cafe society, which means when it comes to eating, they intake on taking leisurely time, whether alone or with friends. And the cultural arm of the United Nations recognized French culinary culture as a, quote, a social custom aimed at celebrating the most important moments in the lives of individuals and groups. Add some more social analysis. When it comes to the French ice cream itself, if you compare it to Italian gelato, French ice cream is a bit more creamier and heavier and more butter fat, which equals more cream. Unlike how with Italian gelato, it's more milkier and heavier, but there's more sugar, there's less air, there's less cream. And the common characteristic between the two is the use of eggs. And Talenti is not made up of high fructose corn syrup like American ice creams. American ice cream is more cream-like, where gelato is more milk than cream.
So now on to the economic analysis. There are different characteristics of the French economy, and various statistics of this country include it being one of the largest in the EU. Also, there has been a long period of stability and slight growth in the an additional fact or statistic about France is that along with other European countries, their currency is roughly equivalent to the US dollar. As you can see, one US dollar is around 0.98 euros. With a GDP of approximately $2.6 trillion in 2020, France is the world's 5th largest economy, and in Europe, they're the 3rd largest economy. It has substantial agricultural resources and maintains a strong manufacturing sector, despite a recent decline. So from this, we can see that there is a lot of potential for a company like Talenti Gelato to enter the market and promote their products. Also from the source, they say France is an economically developed nation with a large, diverse, and sophisticated consumer base. Its comparatively affluent populace is a leading consumer of services. There are opportunities for U.S. exporters with innovative products in various sectors like food products, etc. And this exemplifies that there are opportunities for American companies to enter the French market, and more information can be found on the ITA website. So now on to the next slide. For the economic analysis, the first visual shows France's economic growth over time and is represented by their GDP growth for each year from 1975 to 2022. As you can see, in 2020, their GDP growth dropped significantly due to the pandemic, but it has since recovered and released. So this is definitely a positive for Talenti entering France and represents opportunities for them to sell their product. Also, the other image shows how much of the EU's total gross domestic product each country contributes. And you can see that France has the second largest portion of the total, and they make up 17.2%. And this was data from 2020. So now on to the topic of whether or not desserts are considered a luxury or commodity. From the Spoon University source below, it can be seen that there are a number of arguments for each side. Can often be described as a luxury due to the fact that it's not necessarily a required part of a person's daily diet or food intake. Also, many kinds of desserts can often be linked to weight gain, excess sugar intake, and stuff like that. However, to play devil's advocate, it could also be considered a commodity because of how popular it is, the food group has gotten, and how many people say that it can actually be beneficial to a person's healthy and balanced diet. So overall, as I said before, it is complicated and could go either way, but there's no denying how popular.
So now on to the Talenti background and economic analysis continued. As we mentioned earlier, Talenti is a subsidiary of Unilever, and this shows a significant part of their economic impact and their story in general. They're one of the larger companies under the Unilever umbrella, and in 2014, they could be found at almost 40,000 retail sites across the United States. And from the bizcommunity.com source, they state that some 87 million pints of Talenti Gelato had been sold since 2007. And you can see a diagram on the right which shows the various companies under the Unilever umbrella, and there's a variety of categories and brands represented. Talenti can be seen under the desserts category, and they have a variety of companies like Dove and Breeze and others.
So moving into our competitive market analysis, our four main competitors in France are Magnum, Haagen-Dazs, Extreme, and any local artisanal ice cream shops and gelato shops. We believe that the competitive advantage that Talenti has above these is the convenience of the take-home pint, the recyclable packaging, and the premium ingredients for dessert connoisseurs with convenience. So Magnum mainly sells ice cream bars. That's their most popular product, and they have physical stores in France, particularly Paris, where their biggest store is. They have a similar target market, and they are under the same parent company as Talenti. Haagen-Dazs also does take-home pints and quarts, and they have a very strong international presence. So they're present in approximately 4 different continents, and they actually have distribution facilities in France, which helps them lessen any logistical or transportation issues that might arise when shipping overseas. They boast a Made in France label, which is preferred by a lot of French consumers. Extreme, they mostly have cones. That's their most popular product, and they target to a younger demographic in their most recent campaigns. They're a Nestlé brand, so it's very highly recognizable. There's a lot of brand awareness behind it. And lastly, we have local ice cream shops. These are the most expensive by far, but they are the freshest, and they can boast seasonal flavors, and they have local business support and customer service that someone who is shipping internationally might not have. Here I have made a competitive analysis matrix where you can see competitive edge on the x-axis, or no, that's the y-axis, where you can see competitive edge on the y-axis and competitive advantage Extreme is going to be towards the lower end. They have a more broad target market because although they do target a younger demographic, they tend to market to a broader market, and they are the lowest cost of all. On the other spectrum, we'll see the local ice cream shops, where they range from 3 to 6 euros per scoop or serving. So they really depend on differentiation with their seasonal flavors and whatnot. Magnum is going to be towards the bottom. They have a more narrow target market. They're very luxurious, very premium, very sleek, and they're more on they're stuck in between cost focus and differentiation focus. They have a mid-range kind of price. Haagen-Dazs, more expensive, although the packaging is not nearly as luxurious. They do boast more authentically sourced ingredients. And then Talenti, we hope to put right here in this spot between differentiation and differentiation focus, because what's going to set us apart is our unique flavors and our packaging. So, Porter's 5 forces. Our supplier power is going to be low because there's many suppliers of raw materials, and there's very low switching costs. So think milk, think eggs, are authentic. Hold on. I can't talk now. Okay. So our supplier power is going to be low because there are many suppliers of the raw materials that Talenti uses, such as eggs, milk, and any other more common materials. Our buyer power will be high because switching costs for buyers is very low, and there are many substitutes in the market. Threat of new entry, it's going to be more mid-tier because although human capital needs are low for production, because a lot of the production can be automated in this industry, initial investments are pretty high, especially, a global expansion. Substitutes, as I said before, there's many dessert substitutions available, not just in the ice cream and gelato market, also in the French dessert market, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of bakeries. In competitive rivalry, competition spans into different categories, from affordable offerings to premium categories. So Talenti has to compete with local vendors and be able to create an equally fulfilling experience for consumers through unique flavors and authentic ingredients. This is a lot of talking. SWOT analysis. Let's get into it. So strengths. They do in the United States offer sorbetto and dairy-free options, which is something that they can expand to once they're established in this new market. They have a variety of flavors right now, 30 plus. Of course, entering a new market, you don't want to overfill or oversell. So we'll only start with 5 flavors in the beginning, the most popular with French consumers. It's more health conscious option. Lower calories, smaller serving sizes, and they're best selling in the US. So if we're able to adapt our marketing tactics to this new market, then we can be successful. Weaknesses are that there is no prior international expansion. So there's definitely going to be a huge learning curve in adapting those marketing tactics. Being produced in the US might not be received as well by some French consumers, and it is a more limited market due to competitive shelf bidding, getting on the shelves in grocery stores, and their low advertising that they've done in the past. Opportunities, there's recyclable packaging. So French consumers are very much moving towards environmentally friendly practices, and this product fits perfectly with that. We think that international ingredients will kind of offset being produced in the US because they are sourced other places, therefore making them more authentic. And, there's a new product appeal with the right marketing campaigns. French consumers are very tech savvy, and with digital campaigns and the usage of influencers, we feel that we can really penetrate this market. In threats, there is the international recognition of competitor brands like Haagen-Dazs or Magnum, and there is the made in France preference. There's also transportation and tariff logistics that we would have to overcome those barriers, and we'd have to overcome the stigma that it's a copycat of local gelato. It's a copycat of local gelato offerings. So moving on to our marketing plan and our STP. We're going to start off with price. So the average cost of living in France is anywhere from 2,000 to 2.4 thousand a month. Their average monthly income is $3,000, which means that they do have a little bit of expendable income there, right there in that average. The per capita expenditure of ice cream stood at a $45 in 2018 in France, meaning the per capita expenditure of ice cream stood at a US $45 in France, which was much higher compared to both the global and regional levels. With this information that we have, we've decided that we're going to price our product at 5.5 euros per pint. It is a little bit of a markup from the US price due to tariffs and transportation costs. And, we want to be able to give a luxurious commodity. So we want to be premium. To compete with local artisanal ice cream shops and the higher end ice cream brands, we're pricing competitively. Our product. So per capita consumption of ice cream in France stood at 5.1 kilograms in 2018, and again, was higher than both the global and regional levels. Take home and bulk ice cream was and still is the largest category and in value and volume sales in frozen goods, and they're forecasted to continue to grow in volume and value coming into 2023. In France, flexible packaging is the most commonly used pack material and accounts for 64% of the French ice cream sector. So Talenti fits right into that. It's sleek and coming in, as I mentioned before, we are going to hone in on the 5 most popular flavors of ice cream in France based off of multiple studies done. So that's going to be vanilla, chocolate, pistachio, lemon sorbet, and caramel, of which we already have pre-established recipes that we can transfer over to this new market and adapt as needed. So talking about place, we're going to focus on bigger cities. France, Lyon, Marseille, just because that is where the bulk of the population is, and they tend to have a higher income and therefore more money to be spending on products and services. So we want to hone in on being in supermarkets and grocery stores, just because, again, logistically, e-commerce as it stands right now might not be the best option for Talenti. So in France, hypermarkets and supermarkets were the largest distribution channel with a share of 60.2% in 2018, followed by food and drink specialists and convenience stores. So that's where we want to be. The largest and most common supermarkets in France are Carrefour and Intermarché. And we really want to try to get into Picard, which is a frozen goods specialty store, just because we feel it is a good platform for Talenti to be, considering its popularity and uprising in France. The way that we're going to stand out from other products in the freezers are we want to offer educational freezer stickers to the grocery markets where we have shelf space, highlighting quality processes, authentic ingredients, and pint cycling. Because again, some French consumers might be put off by the fact that it is produced in the US, and we really want to educate them and try to bring them the other way. Because of their tech savviness, we want to offer them, as we do in the US, Uber Eats delivery offers once we enter the market. So our main promotion target market is going to be women 22 years old and above, just because women are the main shoppers in the household, in the Fuck. Okay, go back. This is a lot of talking. Okay. So, moving into promotion, our main promotion target market is going to be women 22 years old and above because they are the main shoppers in French households. They also make up one of the larger segments of consumers between the ages of 24 and 55. Over 50% of fuck my life. Oh my God. Take it back. So, moving into promotion, our main target market for our promotion is going to be women 22 and older, just because they are doing the bulk of the shopping in French households, and they are part of the larger consumer base of ages 24 and 55. They make up more than 50% of consumers in France. And consumption of ice cream is higher among females than males in France. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to use traditional advertising channels and mix in digital tactics, just because traditional advertising channels are still very much used in France, and they are a very digitally savvy population. Whoa. All right, so first we are going to take a search engine optimization and digital offer tactic. We want to incentivize this population to try something new, and because they're so active online, there's a lot of value in taking advantage of SEO and putting some marketing budget towards those digital tactics. Continuing on with those digital tactics, we want to partner with French influencers and micro influencers because that is a channel to raise awareness and stimulate trust and loyalty specifically. Influencers are really making waves in how consumers have their zero moment of truth and how they go through the buying process. So if we can do this correctly, I feel like we can overcome that distrust of a foreign brand and a new product and really run with it and increase the demand of the product. In traditional advertising means, we really want to hone in on television advertisements, just because those can also be adapted for streaming services. We want to have two main advertisements, one that features a woman with family and one that features a single working woman, because, you know, women wear a lot of hats in French culture. And we want to emphasize pleasure because French consumers commonly spend for pleasure.
The basis for our segmentation is that Talenti is a lower tier premium product which will be marketed as such. Important characteristics of the market segments include upper middle class women who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Demographics and psychographics of our target market include the empowered activist, which was found from Euromonitor.com, and it can be seen above. It makes up 23% of French consumers, and some of the characteristics of the empowered activists are that they feel they can make a difference, they're concerned about global issues and what's going on in the world, and also they seek products that are green, eco-conscious, vegan, healthy, and so forth. In general, our segmentation will be consumers who purchase a lot of goods and services, view desserts as important or beneficial, and more will be covered in the next slide. From SantanderTrade.com, it says more than half of the population in France is aged between 20 and 64 years old. So this is definitely something to keep in mind with who we're targeting. So potential and commercial attractiveness of each of the segments include a large percentage of people in the adult age group. Also, France's population actually has a high as well as diversified level of mass consumption. Food and drinks make up 10% of household consumption expenditure, as you can see in the table to the right, and it ranks highly compared to the other common expenditures. In general, the one or more segments that we will be targeting include single working women, middle-aged family mothers, and so forth. So next for positioning, the marketing mix and strategy for each of the segments was previously discussed, but primarily we'll be focusing on TV advertising, influencer promotion, macro and micro, etc. A majority of French consumers are prone to mass consumption. Also, other consumer behavior includes a growing interest in sustainable products, whether that be organic, local, natural, without parabens or preservatives, and so forth. In the food sector, despite a fall in prices in the recent years, the quantity of products purchased has decreased. However, the quality of purchases has improved. There has been an increase in sales of organic products labeled vegan, local, fresh, seasonal, and things of that nature. So now for the SCP overview. From lloydsbanktrade.com, it is stated internet penetration rate reached 88%. 82% of the population has a computer, 85% have internet. So based on all of this, as well as other factors, we will determine the best strategy for who our target market is, our segmentation strategy, and so forth. SCP of gelato depend on factors such as average age, demographics, psychographics, and more. Specifically, the various groups of consumers, population size, and the various age groups, markets, willingness to buy for various segments, etc. Once again, the 2 to 3 target groups that we will be striving to market to include middle class, slightly older parents, specifically mothers, female adults, and middle to upper class women who are interested in online retail and e-commerce. With regards to comparing these aspects of France to the US, some of the similarities include online connectedness and the purchasing power of the euro compared to the dollar. And then for obvious differences, there's the cultural differences as well as casualness, which is discussed in the LinkedIn source, which is provided. As it is stated in the santandertrade.com source, French people are increasingly attracted to online sales, e-commerce, and smartphone use. Also, it states France's population has a high and diversified level of mass consumption, like was stated before.
That was definitely the wrong thing. Hi. Okay, so for regulatory trading stipulations or intellectual property, there are a lot of different stipulations involved with importing products, whether it's just the ingredients or the fully made product, that can hinder actually being able to sell your product and even getting it into the country. Because France, they're okay, so we're gonna edit that out. There are a lot of tricky stipulations regarding the production and the selling of imported products. The Code de la Consommation stipulates that all products destined for France must have labels in French, regardless of the origin of product. Multilingual labels are acceptable, but the use of the French language is mandatory on labels, documents, packaging, and merchandise. And the use of foreign names is forbidden. You can't do that. So not even in place of existing equivalent French terms. But foreign names are authorized when the French equivalent doesn't exist. Because, some translations, there's no direct translation. Job offers in the press, labor contracts, and other documents relating to social relations within the company, they're also required to be in French. And this is a law. France is the first country outside of the US and Canada to regulate franchising. So, the EU certification is required for animal products. That covers a variety of things, a range. And the complement for the labeling article is Article R112-8 that indicates that labeling may be contained in one or more other languages in addition to French. So some products can be imported commercially and only by approved operators. Agriculture or food products have to be approved before importing them, like GMOs and novel foods. And waste prevention and management is regulated by French Environmental Code and modified by the Law on the Circular Economy, which introduced new obligations on plastic waste that impact production and consumption habits. To sell products in the EU market of 28 member states, as well as in EFTA and Turkey, the US exporters are required to apply for CE marking whenever their product is covered by specific product legislation. The registration trademark law allows for reserving the sign, the thing in question, with a distinctive character for it's valid and enforceable for an unlimited period of time. And trade secrets, which is how the product in question was made in this case, whether it's for our layers product, our gelato, our sorbet, and our different products, they're defined and protected under specific statutory provisions in France. And there are no registration formalities required for you to file with any French office to enable the company to have protection for its trade secrets. That's just a given there. There's nothing special you need to do. Whereas French regulations, they do limit superlatives, like saying this is a great product. We use great resources. We use great in-season strawberries. You can't use those. And improper ingredient names and food labeling, for example, peanut butter, it would have to be changed to peanut paste, as in what it actually is, since it doesn't contain any butter from dairy products defined by French regulations. So a lot of French regulations in regards to products that, like peanut butter, that are made up of multiple things or flavors, it has to meet a specific requirement and ratio of products to be classified as certain things, like peanut paste instead of peanut butter. So here are some more additional requirements, regulations that are more specific and these are EU regulations, which France still has to follow either way, because, it's a part of it. Regulation number 853 went into effect in 2004 and has also been revised. It talks about additional specific hygiene rules for food of animal origin, like meat, fishery products, and cheese. Again, our flavors like raspberry cheesecake, chocolate cherry cheesecake, our layers products, those would be impacted by the hygiene rules. Regulation number 178, EU regulation, went into effect in 2002. Discusses the general principles and requirements of European food legislation that complements hygiene requirements by establishing certain obligations relating to the traceability of a food, which means the complete, while we say source from, we're going to have to do that again. But while we say vanilla is sourced from Madagascar, it has to be traceable to the specific area of Madagascar. It's a very exact practice. And this is so they'll know exactly what was wrong with it and what other products may be affected. And also so they're able to reach out to the consumers and say, this is the problem specifically this, that, and make sure there's all the information available. Loi Dubin is a disclosure law that applies to franchising, stipulating that a disclosure needs to be provided at least 20 days before signing an agreement or paying any money. And there's a lot of little laws like this that can either halt your business or let you run your business in the country, but keep you from actually getting paid, accepting money for the service that you provide. And 30% tariff on dairy imports to France, which is a markup from US prices, and positions it as a lower tier premium good.
So moving on to final recommendations and summary. With all this information, we really do believe that there's great potential and opportunities in the French market for Talenti Gelato. What we want to recommend is, based on all the information we've learned, we want to leverage our initial marketing plan for the French consumer, as they do have digital preferences, and really establish a customer base. We want to ensure that any French translations are thorough and well-proofed. We want to use our Unilever resources and pre-establish relationships there and their expertise to facilitate entry into the French market. We also want to adapt flavor names to align with the French legislation and use phrases like ethically sourced and authentic ingredients to avoid those superlative regulations. And we want to avoid the release of flavors impacted by hygiene rules for now. In the future, we want to recommend moving production to Europe for reduced transportation costs and future expansion into European markets, which will enable us to, be able to release those flavors that are impacted by this legislation. We want to consider the release of sorbettos and more dairy-free options to better compete and to benefit those health-conscious French consumers. And we want to conduct ongoing marketing research to gauge the health of this new venture and adapt as needed. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much.